I stood at my father's graveside, watching the last shovel of dirt fall onto the mahogany casket. The October wind cut through my black suit, but I barely felt it. Numbness had settled into my bones 3 days ago when the heart attack took him. "Jake, son, we need to talk." My Uncle Robert's hand landed heavy on my shoulder. At 55, he still carried himself like the rodeo champion he'd been in his youth. His weathered face showed what I thought was genuine concern. "Not today, Uncle Robert, please. I know it's hard, but there are things about the ranch you need to understand. Your father and I had arrangements." I turned to face him, confused. Dad had never mentioned any arrangements. The Broken Arrow Ranch had been in our family for 3 generations. Dad always said it would be mine someday. "What kind of arrangements?" Robert's eyes darted around the small crowd of mourners, still lingering near the cemetery gates. "Legal stuff. Business partnerships. Your father was... well, he was in deeper than you knew." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "The ranch, Jake. The cattle operation. It's not as simple as you think. There were debts, agreements. I've been handling the books for years." I stared at him, trying to process his words. Dad had always been secretive about finances, but I'd assumed that was just his way. He'd grown up during the Depression, when talking about money was considered improper. "We'll figure it out," I said finally. Robert nodded, but something in his expression made me uneasy. "Yes, we will. But Jake, you need to prepare yourself. Things might not be what you expected." As the last mourners drifted away, I remained by the grave, Robert's words echoing in my mind like a warning bell I was too grief-stricken to fully understand. 2 weeks after the funeral, I sat across from Robert in Dad's old office, surrounded by ledgers and legal documents I couldn't make sense of. The room still smelled like his pipe tobacco, making everything feel surreal. "I'm sorry, Jake, but the truth is the truth." Robert spread papers across the desk like a dealer showing his hand. "Your father signed over operational control to me 5 years ago. Look here." He pointed to a document with Dad's signature at the bottom. The legal language was dense, but the meaning seemed clear enough. Robert had been granted management rights to the entire cattle operation. "But why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "He was sick, Jake. Sicker than he let on. The early stages of dementia. He knew he couldn't handle the business decisions anymore, so he asked me to step in." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Dad had seemed sharp right up until the end. Sure, he'd been forgetful sometimes, but dementia? It didn't seem possible. "What does this mean for me?" Robert's expression softened with what looked like pity. "It means I'm in charge now. The ranch, the cattle, the bank accounts. It's all under my control until we can sort out the estate properly." "And how long will that take?" "Could be months, maybe longer. These things are complicated when there are debts involved." I stared at the papers, trying to find some loophole, some way this couldn't be real. "What debts?" "Medical bills, mostly. Your father's treatments were expensive. He mortgaged the ranch to pay for them." Everything I thought I knew about my inheritance was crumbling. I felt like a stranger in my own family's legacy, watching it slip away through legal documents I didn't understand. Living in the foreman's cabin while Robert occupied the main house felt like being a tenant on my own land. Every morning I watched him stride across the property like he owned it, barking orders at the ranch hands who'd worked for my family for decades. "Morning, Jake," he called out as I headed to the barn. "I've got some news. We're selling the South Pasture cattle next week." I stopped in my tracks. "The Angus herd? Dad spent years building that bloodline. Business is business. Prices are good right now and we need the cash flow." I wanted to argue, but what was the point? According to those documents, I had no say in anything. I was just another hired hand now, except I wasn't even getting paid. That afternoon, I found myself in town at Murphy's Diner, nursing a cup of coffee and trying to figure out my next move. The place was nearly empty except for old Pete Murphy behind the counter and a stranger in the expensive suit sitting in the corner booth. The stranger looked up when I entered, studying me with sharp gray eyes. He was maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of bearing that suggested money and authority. "You're Jake Morrison, aren't you?" he asked, standing and extending his hand. "I'm Thomas Hartwell from First National Bank." I shook his hand, confused. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Hartwell. Is there something I can help you with?" "Actually, I think I might be able to help you. I've been trying to reach you for weeks, but your uncle said you were indisposed." Something in his tone made me pay attention. "What about?" Hartwell glanced around the empty diner, then leaned closer. "It's about your father's accounts. There are some discrepancies I think you should know about." Hartwell's office at First National Bank felt like stepping into another world. Mahogany paneling, leather chairs, and the quiet authority of old money surrounded us as he closed the door behind me. "Coffee?" he offered, but I was too nervous to accept. "Mr. Hartwell, what exactly are these discrepancies you mentioned?" He settled behind his desk and opened a thick file folder. "Your father was one of our most valued clients for over 20 years. We handled all his business accounts, personal finances, everything." "Okay. 3 months ago, your uncle came in with power of attorney documents claiming your father had granted him control over all accounts due to mental incapacity." My heart sank. So Robert had been telling the truth about Dad's condition. But here's the thing, Jake. Hartwell leaned forward, his expression grave. "I had lunch with your father just 2 weeks before he died. His mind was sharp as ever. We discussed expanding the cattle operation, new breeding programs. He was making long-term plans." I felt a spark of hope. "Are you saying the power of attorney was fake?" "I'm saying something doesn't add up. Your father never mentioned any cognitive issues to me, and I would have noticed. We'd been friends for decades." Hartwell pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. "This is what really concerns me. 2 days after your father's funeral, your uncle transferred $400,000 from the ranch operating account to a personal account in his name." The number hit me like a physical blow. $400,000. Can he do that legally? If the power of attorney is legitimate, yes. But Jake, there's something else. Something your uncle doesn't know I have. Hartwell reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "Your father gave me this 6 months ago. He said if anything happened to him, I should give it to you personally." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper in Dad's familiar handwriting, dated 6 months before his death. "Jake, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Robert has probably told you some story about me being sick or incompetent. Don't believe him. My mind is fine, and I've been watching him steal from us for years. The real ranch documents are in the safe behind Mom's portrait in the study. The combination is your birthday. Month, day, year. Trust no one but Tom Hartwell. He's been helping me gather evidence. Dad." I read it twice, my heart pounding. "Mr. Hartwell, did you know about this? Your father suspected Robert was embezzling for months. We'd been quietly documenting irregularities in the accounts. Your father was building a case." "What kind of irregularities?" Hartwell pulled out a ledger. "Phantom feed purchases, inflated veterinary bills, cattle sales that never appeared in the ranch books. Over the past 2 years, we estimate Robert skimmed nearly $200,000. The room felt like it was spinning. "And the power of attorney documents? We'll need a handwriting expert, but I suspect they're forgeries. Your father never would have signed over control of the ranch. It was his life's work." I stood up, suddenly energized. "I need to get to that safe." "Wait." Hartwell grabbed my arm. "If we're right about this, Robert has committed serious crimes. We need to be careful. If he realizes we're onto him, he might destroy evidence or transfer more money. So what do? We get the documents from the safe first. Then we call the sheriff. But Jake, you need to act normal around your uncle. until we have everything we need." I nodded, though the thought of pretending everything was fine while Robert continued his charade made me sick. "One more thing," Hartwell said. "Your father left specific instructions. If anything happened to him under suspicious circumstances, I was to contact the state police immediately." That evening, I waited until Robert drove into town for his weekly poker game before slipping into the main house. The study felt like a shrine to my father's memory. His reading glasses still on the desk, his favorite coffee mug unwashed beside the window. Mom's portrait hung exactly where it always had, her gentle smile watching over Dad's sanctuary. With shaking hands, I moved the heavy frame aside, revealing the small wall safe I'd never known existed. The combination worked on the first try. 08/15/1983, my 31st birthday. Inside, I found a manila envelope thick with documents and a small digital recorder. I spread the papers across Dad's desk, my heart racing as I realized what I was looking at. The real ranch ownership documents showed my name as sole heir. There was no mention of Robert anywhere, but it was the bank statements that made my blood run cold. Dad had been meticulously tracking every discrepancy, every forged signature, every phantom transaction. Robert hadn't just been stealing, he'd been systematically looting the ranch for years. I picked up the digital recorder with trembling fingers and pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room, weak but determined. "Jake, if you're hearing this, then Robert's lies have finally caught up with him. I've been recording our conversations for months. He doesn't know I'm on to him, but I have everything we need to put him in prison." The recording continued with snippets of conversations where Robert admitted to falsifying documents and moving money. Dad had been building an airtight case. I was so absorbed in the evidence that I almost missed the sound of gravel crunching in the driveway. Car doors slammed, and I heard Robert's voice along with another man I didn't recognize. Panic shot through me as I quickly gathered the documents and shoved them back into the envelope. They were coming back early. I barely had time to close the safe and rehang Mom's portrait before I heard the front door open. My heart hammered as I grabbed the envelope and looked for an escape route. "Jake, that you in there?" Robert's voice carried down the hallway. "Just getting some of Dad's books," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I shoved the envelope inside my jacket and picked up a random book from the shelf. Robert appeared in the doorway with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, thin, with cold eyes and an expensive suit that didn't belong in ranch country. "Jake, this is Mr. Vincent from the bank. We're just going over some paperwork." Vincent studied me with the kind of look that made my skin crawl. "You're the son. I've heard a lot about you." "Nothing bad, I hope," I managed, clutching the book tighter. "Robert tells me you're having trouble accepting the new arrangement," Vincent said. "That can be problematic." There was something threatening in his tone that made me want to get out of there immediately. "I'm still processing everything. It's been a difficult time." "Of course it has." Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Why don't you head back to the cabin? We have business to discuss." I nodded and headed for the door, but Vincent's voice stopped me. "Jake? That's an interesting book choice." I looked down and realized I'd grabbed Dad's journal, the one where he'd written personal thoughts and observations about the ranch. My blood turned to ice. "Dad always said I should read more," I said lamely. Vincent exchanged a look with Robert that I didn't like at all. "Well, enjoy your reading," Robert said. "We'll talk tomorrow." I walked out of the house as calmly as I could, but once I was outside, I practically ran to the cabin. Whatever Vincent was, he wasn't just a banker, and Robert's expression told me I was running out of time. I called Hartwell from the cabin's landline, my hands still shaking from the encounter. "Tom, we have a problem. Robert came back early with some guy named Vincent. They're suspicious." "Vincent?" Hartwell's voice sharpened. "Tall, thin, expensive suit? You know him?" "He's not from any legitimate bank. Vincent Carrera. He's a loan shark who operates out of the city. If he's involved, this is bigger than embezzlement." My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Your uncle might have borrowed money against the ranch using forged documents. If that's the case, you could lose everything even if we prove the power of attorney is fake. I sank into Dad's old recliner, overwhelmed. What do I do? First, tell me about the safe. Did you find anything? I described the documents and the digital recorder. Hartwell listened intently, occasionally asking for clarification. This is exactly what we need, he said when I finished. But Jake, you're in danger. If Robert realizes what you have, he might do something desperate. Like what? Like make you disappear. Men like Vincent don't solve problems with lawyers. The word sent a chill down my spine. Should I call the police? Not yet. We need to get you and those documents somewhere safe first. Can you get to town without being seen? I looked out the cabin window. Robert's truck was still parked at the main house, but I could see lights moving around inside. They were definitely up to something. There's an old service road that leads to the back 40. I could take Dad's ATV. Good. Meet me at my house in an hour. Bring everything from the safe. As I prepared to leave, I caught sight of movement near the barn. Two figures were walking around the property with flashlights, checking buildings. They were looking for something, or someone. I waited until the flashlights disappeared behind the equipment shed before slipping out the cabin's back door. The envelope was tucked inside my jacket, and I'd grabbed Dad's spare truck keys just in case. The ATV started on the second pull, its engine puttering quietly in the night air. I kept the headlight off and navigated by moonlight, following the old cattle trail that wound through the back pasture toward the service road. Halfway there, I heard the rumble of truck engines starting up at the main house. My heart raced as I gunned the ATV, no longer caring about the noise. They'd discovered I was gone. The service road was rough and overgrown, but it connected to Highway 9 about 2 miles from town. I could see headlights in the distance behind me, growing closer. I abandoned the ATV at the highway and started running toward town, staying in the ditch beside the road. The envelope bounced against my ribs with each step, a constant reminder of what was at stake. Hartwell's house sat on a quiet street lined with old oak trees. I pounded on his front door, glancing nervously over my shoulder. "Jake, thank God." He pulled me inside quickly. "Are you all right?" "They were searching the property. I think they know." Hartwell led me to his study, where he'd already laid out legal documents and a tape recorder. "Show me what you found." I handed him the envelope and watched his expression grow grave as he examined each piece of evidence. "This is incredible. Your father documented everything. Forged signatures, false invoices, even recorded conversations. But Jake, look at this." He held up a bank transfer slip I hadn't noticed before. "This shows Robert transferred the ranch deed to Vincent's company 3 days ago. He's essentially sold your family's land to pay off gambling debts." The room spun around me. Can he do that? Not legally, but possession is 9/10 of the law. Hartwell poured 2 glasses of bourbon and handed me one. "We need to move fast. I've already called Sheriff Martinez. He's on his way." "Will he believe us?" "Elena Martinez has known your family for 20 years. She'll listen." Hartwell sat across from me, his expression serious. "But Jake, even if we prove Robert forged the documents, getting the ranch back won't be simple. Vincent's people have already filed paperwork claiming ownership." I took a sip of bourbon, feeling it burn away some of the fear. "What about the recordings?" "They'll help with criminal charges, but civil court is different. We need to prove the original transfer was fraudulent, which means expert testimony, handwriting analysis, the works." "How long will that take?" "Months, maybe a year." The front door chimed, and Sheriff Martinez walked in without waiting for an invitation. Elena Martinez was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd worked her way up from deputy to sheriff through sheer competence. "Tom called me," she said, settling into a chair. "Says you boys have stumbled onto something big." I spent the next hour walking her through everything: Dad's letter, the safe, the evidence, my encounter with Vincent. She listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. "I know Vincent Carrera," she said finally. "He's been on our radar for years, but he's careful. Never leaves evidence." "What about Robert?" "That's different. If these documents are real, he's committed multiple felonies. But Jake, I need to warn you. Men like Vincent don't just walk away from deals like this." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're a threat to a very profitable scheme. Until we can arrest everyone involved, you're not safe." Hartwell leaned forward. "What do you suggest?" "Witness protection, unofficially. Jake disappears for a few days while we build our case. But first, we need to get more evidence." "Like what?" Martinez smiled grimly. "Like catching them in the act." 2 days later, I sat in an unmarked police van parked half a mile from the ranch, wearing a wire and trying to control my nerves. Sheriff Martinez had convinced me that confronting Robert directly was our best chance of getting him to confess on tape. "Remember," Martinez's voice crackled through my earpiece, "get him talking about the forged documents. We need him to admit what he did." I walked up to the main house just as the sun was setting, painting the sky the color of old blood. Robert's truck was in the driveway, but I didn't see Vincent's car anywhere. Robert answered the door with a beer in his hand and suspicion in his eyes. "Jake, didn't expect to see you back so soon." "We need to talk, Uncle Robert, about Dad, about the ranch." He studied my face for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in. Want a beer?" "Sure." The house felt different now, hostile, like it knew I didn't belong anymore. We sat in the living room where I'd spent countless Christmas mornings as a kid. "You've been asking questions around town," Robert said. "That banker friend of yours has been filling your head with ideas." "What kind of ideas?" "That I somehow cheated you out of your inheritance." He took a long pull from his beer. "Jake, your father was sick. You know that, right? The dementia was getting worse every month." "Funny thing about that," I said, my heart pounding. "I found some of Dad's recent journals. His handwriting was steady right up until he died. Doesn't sound like dementia to me." Robert's expression hardened. "What journals?" "The ones where he wrote about you stealing from the ranch accounts. The ones where he documented every forged signature, every fake invoice." For a moment, Robert just stared at me. Then he started laughing. "You think you're smart, don't you, boy? You have no idea what you're dealing with." Robert's laughter died away, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Your father was a fool, Jake. A sentimental fool who couldn't see that the old ways of ranching were dead. So you decided to help yourself to his money?" "I decided to modernize, to make real money instead of scraping by on cattle sales." Robert stood up and walked to the window. "Do you know how much this land is worth to developers? Millions, Jake, millions." My blood ran cold. "You're selling to developers?" "Vincent represents a consortium that wants to build a shopping complex. The location is perfect, right off the highway, close to town." "Your father would never have agreed, but he's not here anymore." "And the power of attorney documents?" Robert turned back to me with a smile that made my skin crawl. "Amazing what you can accomplish with a good forger and a dead man's signature. Your father signed a lot of papers over the years. It wasn't hard to find samples. I couldn't believe he was admitting everything so casually." "You killed him, didn't you?" "I didn't have to. The stress did it for me. All those late nights worrying about money, about the ranch. His heart just gave out." Robert's smile widened. Though I'll admit I may have encouraged his anxiety by mentioning how much debt the ranch was carrying. "You're sick. I'm practical. And you, nephew, are about to become a problem I can't afford." The front door opened, and Vincent walked in with 2 men I'd never seen before. Large men with the kind of faces that suggested violence was their profession. "Is this the boy who's been causing trouble?" Vincent asked. "That's him," Robert said. "Jake, meet my business partners. They're going to help you understand why it's better to accept the new reality." I stood up slowly, my mind racing. The wire was still recording, but that wouldn't matter if I didn't survive to testify. "What do you want from me?" "Simple," Vincent said. "You're going to sign a document stating that you agree with your uncle's management of the estate." "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the way Vincent's men were positioning themselves between me and the door. "Then you'll have an unfortunate accident," Vincent said matter-of-factly. "Ranching is dangerous work. People fall into machinery, get trampled by cattle, all sorts of tragic mishaps." Robert pulled out a legal document and set it on the coffee table. "Just sign it, Jake. Take the money we're offering and start over somewhere else. You're young enough." I looked at the paper, a formal statement renouncing any claim to the ranch and accepting a settlement of $50,000, a fraction of what the land was worth. "This is my family's legacy," I said. "3 generations of Morrisons built this place." "And now it's time for something new," Vincent replied. "Progress, Jake. You can't stop progress." I picked up the pen, my hand trembling. "You know, Uncle Robert, there's something I should probably mention." "What's that?" "I'm wearing a wire. Sheriff Martinez has been listening to every word you've said for the past 10 minutes. The color drained from Robert's face. Vincent's men reached inside their jackets, but it was too late. The front door exploded inward as Sheriff Martinez and 4 deputies burst into the room with weapons drawn. "Nobody move! Hands where I can see them!" Vincent tried to run for the back door, but found Deputy Johnson waiting for him. Within minutes, all 4 men were in handcuffs. "You did good, Jake," Martinez said as they led Robert past me. "Your father would be proud." Robert stopped and looked at me with pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've done. This was bigger than just the ranch. There are people involved who won't forget this." "Then they can join you in prison," I replied. As the police cars pulled away, I stood alone in the house where I'd grown up, finally understanding what my father had died trying to protect. 6 months later, I stood in the same spot where I'd scattered Dad's ashes, but everything felt different now. The legal battles were over, the ranch was officially mine again, and Robert was serving a 15-year sentence for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Vincent and his associates had received even longer sentences. The FBI investigation had uncovered a network of land fraud schemes across 3 states, with my ranch being just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Hartwell had helped me recover most of the stolen money, and I'd used it to modernize the operation just as Dad had planned. New breeding programs, updated equipment, and sustainable grazing practices that would ensure the Broken Arrow Ranch thrived for another generation. The ranch hands who'd worked for my family for decades were back, and we'd hired several more. The cattle business was good, but more importantly, the land was being cared for the way Dad would have wanted. I'd found something else in Dad's papers, a letter he'd written to me on my 18th birthday but never sent. In it, he talked about the responsibility that came with owning land, about being a steward for future generations rather than just an owner. "The land doesn't belong to us," he'd written. "We belong to the land. Our job is to leave it better than we found it." Standing there in the evening light, watching the cattle graze peacefully in the distance, I finally understood what he meant. This wasn't just about property or money or even family legacy. It was about continuity, about being part of something larger than yourself. I pulled out my phone and called Hartwell. "Tom, I've been thinking about Dad's expansion plans. I think it's time to move forward." "Sounds good, Jake. Your father would be proud of what you've accomplished." As I walked back toward the house, I could almost hear Dad's voice on the wind, telling me I'd done the right thing.